Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. Welcome to Friday's report out. I'm delighted to welcome everyone, and particularly colleagues involved from across the health and care system on discharge. But first of all, as ever, it's a real pleasure and privilege to award Lean for Leaders certificate. And well done to Chris. Well done, Chris. Proud moment. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Delighted you've got to this point, and you've been a great champion of the Leeds improvement method in critical care, and used it, I know, during some of the incredibly challenging periods that we've had and still having indeed in critical care with capacity and workload and demand. But I'm delighted you've achieved this despite all of those challenges and pressures and the hours I know you'll have had to work. Did you want to say anything about any sort of key headlines about your journey, your learning, reflections?
Yeah, I think I reflect back on that statement around everybody having two jobs. One is to deliver an outstanding service, and then there's that continual improvement theme of striving to keep improving that service. And I think Lean for Leaders, the Leeds improvement method, is a fundamental enabler for that pursuit and to serve the overall aim of being the best for integrated and specialist care. I think what I've learned through it and the way it's helped structure, frame thinking, questions to support the wider teams, the people that do the work to improve the work has been fundamental, and I think that will continue into everything that I do. So just really grateful for the opportunity and for all of the support of the KPO, and it's brilliant to see the effect of the work in critical care, and despite kind of all the challenges we face.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, well said, Chris. Thank you very much and well done. And I think we can all empathise with you in terms of the journey. It's a long journey, but it's an important one, a rewarding one, and I'm sure you've learned a lot and putting it all into practice. Great, thank you. Excellent. So let's move on to our 60-day report out on HOMEFIRST. And if ever there were, I guess, a moment for us when this really, is so important in terms of the overall challenges the health and care system is facing right now. And I can see colleagues joining us from across the city, and can see you, Shona, welcome, and Pip as well. Good to see you both. And I know there'll be colleagues from other parts of the system as well. So it's great to have you with us. And really over to you guys to give us the 60-day report out. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Spence. I'm a pharmacy technician by background. I'm part of the KPO team. I'm a continuous improvement specialist for the department. I was also an RPIW member for the HOMEFIRST RPIW, and welcome to our 60-day report out. Hard to believe that it's 60 days already. Summer has been and gone, and because of that, we've still got some colleagues on summer holidays, so there's only a few team members today, myself, Vic and Fiona, who will be sharing. We'd just like to remind people of our sponsor challenge, which was #HomeFirst, Team Leeds. So thinking very much collaboratively with the team of Leeds, with our partners in community and within the hospital. And our kind of sponsor challenge, or our boundaries, were very much from a patient who's been admitted. How do we get them home first? We've actually kind of worked on extending those boundaries, because we were actually quite a bit of today's focus will talk about prevention of patients coming into the hospital and what we found out about that. But actually, if you think of the size of those boundaries, patients can come in and be in hospital for a period of time, and they can go through numerous processes involving numerous teams. So the scale of the boundary is quite significant and quite daunting. But we just wanted to share that with you. And then we have here's what we call our wonder wheel, which is our kind of highlights our principles, the elements of what the team created within the RPIW itself. It kind of has the patient at the center, thinking about the making it easier and is streamlined for the patient with really good communication along that way. And I will now hand over to Fiona. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Fiona Allport and I'm the Quality Improvement Lead for System Flow. So I'm going to talk around two pieces of work that have come out of the RPIW work. One is about Discharge Pathway 2 audits and key findings, and the second one is around having an enhanced therapy service within ED and the impact of that. I think at the last report out, we discussed that one of the challenges we had was that prior to doing the RPIW event, we hadn't had the time really to do that data collection. So we're in a bit of a funny situation at the moment because we're really doing data collection, audits, looking at findings, defining what the next steps are. So Discharge Pathway 2, for people who mightn't be as familiar with the discharge pathways as others, is very much based around people needing a rehabilitation community bed. So when we talk about auditing Discharge Pathway 2, we've been looking at the no reasons to reside list and being able to challenge some of the work coming at some of the findings from there. So it's been very much focused around community care beds, which are 5 providers within the community and Villa Care coming online as well. So what the audit's shown us is that only 53% of people referred would have been people that you'd identified for a bed needing therapy, and of the other 47% of people, there were some people that you would say would be potentially better going into a temp to perm placement. There's people that are not medically fit for discharge, which I think probably shows that complexity of the people that are being referred on Pathway 2. So one of the things that came through, and this was very much done in combination with the providers of the service, with people working in LTHT, discussing with the wards, was about that understanding and communication. So we've got clear bed pathways of community care beds or intermediate tier beds, discharge to assess beds, temp to perm beds, but that understanding of what a discharge to assess bed and the fact that there isn't therapy isn't really always understood on the ward. And also from talking to some of the acute therapists, that confidence in the community care beds as well to deliver the rehabilitation needed. That there's a potential delay in some of the decision making for long-term care. So when we'd reviewed some of the EDIDs and worked back through PPM Plus, looking at System 1, there were lots of indicators to say this person probably should be going into having that conversation about long-term care earlier than is happening. And by long-term care, I'm referring to nursing home care rather than care homes or going home. And what's really struck me is the importance, which this is a bit teaching everyone to suck eggs, but about decisions being data driven. When we started to do the audit, what we found was that there was a lot of opinions about what was happening with these people, about the length of stay and about the decisions. Next slide, please. So to some sense, a hypothesis of, and I do apologise to everyone because I've given my dog a big bone, but that's not going to make him quiet at all. So the hypothesis was that if we start to focus on referrals, and do some improvement work about how the referrals are coming in, that will lead automatically to decreasing the length of stay in LTHT, decreasing any poor patient care experiences, and then also decreasing the length of stay, bed days and community care beds, and therefore across the whole system, which was one of the metrics we were looking at. So we'd sort of looked at different areas to come in, and we felt that referral focus was the main one that we should start with as a piece of work. Next slide. Thank you. So from the audit, we've identified some next steps, and some of them is really about doing more information gathering, but importantly working across the whole system. So conversations at ward level, so walking the walk. So we're doing some observations about what conversations are having the discharge facilitators, the ward staff having with people that are being referred to a community care bed. Is it really being explored whether this is the best place or whether another pathway would be better? What we do know from the community care bed is there's probably a higher proportion of people being discharged into nursing home care rather than going home than we would expect or want. So to audit, I've put 20 patients, but I know the KPO team keeps saying do odd numbers, so 21 patients. So to audit these patients that have been discharged from the community beds needing nursing homes, and do almost as a group of staff an audit backwards to say, actually, at the ward level, could we have made a decision? What would be the best pathway for these people? On the EDIDs, there's a lot of information about therapy goals, but actually we need to start thinking a little bit wider about likely to return home, wants to return home, maintaining function, preventing deconditioning, and benefiting from an enabling environment, which is very much as what is provided in that community care bed. To do some more work with the acute therapies to think about, actually, do we have the trust and the confidence in the rehabilitation offer in the community care beds? What else do we need to offer to be really getting those proactive referrals for rehabilitation? We've had a lot of focus on discharges, but actually, when we're looking at referrals, do we need to start leaving that capacity for admission avoidance, providing better links with the virtual frailty ward, and ensuring that as much not allowing people to reach the front door, redefining community care beds for the care as an extension of the hospital stay. So having that parity and that almost that drive to sort of move admissions through, reducing latest length of stay, and really to having that ongoing work with providers so everybody knows what does good look like, so everyone's got the same vision of what does a good service look like. Next slide, please. So apologies for the unreadable slide, and we will share them if anybody wants some more details. So this is around work that Krista Johnson's been doing, who's an occupational therapist working in therapy supported discharge. And this was very much around enhancing the Leeds service with additional therapy staff. So Krista's very much been working with the KPO team, doing some value stream maps and being able to identify waste in the process. So I'm obviously reporting on Krista's piece of work. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, although I imagine for most people it's not readable, about the amount of opportunities that there may be to improve the process. So I'm just going to mention a few. One is, so what Krista was very much focusing about is when somebody comes to ED with a more linked up community approach with the neighbourhood teams, what do we need to be able to get that person back to their own home on the same day? So some of the themes that have come out were equipment availability, that actually to get that on the day equipment is really, really difficult. Over processing. So when we did the RPIW event, there was a lot of conversations around the amount of assessments being done concerning somebody's home environment in hospital, when that assessment was often being repeated within the person's home by either neighbourhood team staff or reablement staff, and that we need to start moving that assessment into the community and not making those decisions within hospital about what the next steps and the best steps are. The neighbourhood team capacity, that if that neighbourhood team capacity wasn't available on the day for discharge, then really difficult to avoid an admission or an inappropriate admission into a community care bed base. Failed discharge. So last time Krista gave an example of a lady who'd come into ED, that they'd supported to go home, had a fall when she came home, came back to ED really quickly. And what she'd observed is that often if somebody has come back into ED quickly, that because it's seen as a failed discharge, there's that culture of you have to be either admitted to an acute bed or to a community care bed, when actually with a bit of proactive risk management, working as an MDT between LTHT, the community services, adult social care, that person is better to go back home. Obviously family and carers, and again duplication of assessments. So in some circumstances, Leeds and the neighbourhood team are doing the same assessments on different systems, and that is a really big opportunity to improve. Next slide, please. Hand over to Vic, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Vic Clark-Dunn. I'm a programme manager with Leeds City Council, but supporting the work around HOMEFIRST. So I'm just going to feed back on some general observations, and I think it's fair to say there's been some challenges this month. It's been a real struggle to get the team together, as it's been leave season, but also escalations and pressure in the system have meant that people have had to have that refocus on work. And that's meant that people have been unable to attend some of the RPIW check-ins and support meetings to move the work forward, although people have still been keeping in touch, which has been really positive to see. I think there's right from the start that there's been a sense that being a single team member in organisations has been quite difficult, where there's people have had to take back explaining what they're doing and the development of the PDSA and the work and the methodology, and that has slowed down the work sometimes. So and from our point of view, I think knowing more now about the methodology and the remit of the RPIW, this RPIW is vast. I mean, Matt spoke about it at the start of where the boundaries were, and I think really each piece of work could have been its own RPIW, and I think that's made its own challenges. I think there's such an impetus, I think sometimes in the system, to get things done, that the next piece of work can sometimes overtake what we're doing as well. And in terms of gathering the metrics, again, with it being such a vast piece of work, I think those metrics were quite ambitious, but some of them that we're gathering are dependent on us being able to get the PDSAs done and understand the data around that. And I think for some of them, for example, around equipment, I know that we're trying to do pieces of work around looking at escalation of that within the hospital, and just because of time pressures and leave, we'll be reporting out on that later. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say that Fiona and I would not be able to be doing what we're doing now without the ongoing support from the KPO team. It's just been really fantastic, helping us do what we've been doing. And I think in terms of what we are doing, it's been catalysts for further work, and we're now planning the workshops around the transfer of care hubs, and really clear about what we're doing in terms of the transfer of care processes as work streams. I think in terms of culture, we talked about Krista's work. She's linked really well with Leeds to do the work around therapy supported discharge, and Fiona's really been building those relationships with community care bed providers around the work she's been doing with them and understanding their roles. I think what's been really good is that when people talk now about any piece of change, they are looking for waste in the system, and they're talking about it like that, and they're talking about getting it out and how we can do that, but really still with that focus on the person and making it best for them. And it's building those relationships and understanding across the systems. Next slide, please. So just in terms of next steps, I've just touched on it, but we'll be able to feedback more on the work around equipment. We'll have further findings from the therapy supported discharge, and Fiona will bring back work around the community care beds. And I think the key piece of work we've got over the next couple of weeks is the planning that work that we're doing around looking at the development, the transfer of care hub. That's it from us. Thank you.
Great. Sorry. Oh, we're yeah, right. I'm not interrupting inappropriately. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, those of you who reported out. Now, I'm sure, because we've got some good attendance today, we'll have plenty of questions. And can I just say thank you for a very clear and informative and frank conversation and report out on this. We want to support you as much as possible in this work because it's so important, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll have some questions and comments. Can I start the ball rolling just by, I think that point you made about the challenge of, if you like, the pressure we're all under right now, and the dilemma, I suppose, that we know the answers to those pressures are within the work that we're doing on improvement, but it's releasing colleagues time to really go at those RPIWs and make the changes needed in turn to sort of ease some of those challenges and pressures. Any thoughts on how we can help support that and kind of give colleagues the time and space to do that and make those changes that ultimately we're going to have to make if we're going to achieve a more sustainable approach to this, given the pressures that we're working under?
I suppose we've spent quite a lot of time reflecting about what we could have done differently, and because it was the first time there'd been that whole system RPIW event, it was probably some of that work beforehand about the expectations and probably understanding the enormity of the piece of work. So we had a lot of people who were just single people within a service. So we were asking them to go back and almost sell RPIW KPO as an improvement method. Because it was the frontline staff, some of them didn't feel confident going back and having those conversations. But I also think there's been so many staffing issues for August that people probably couldn't have predicted were going to be so difficult, that when we've had that weekly catch up to support people, we've had lots of people just coming back saying, we're really sorry, but I'm the only person working today in spare or bed bureau. Yeah. So, and from our point of view, it's not really fair to push at that stage. So we are, I think the difficulty is the positive bit is we will probably go beyond 120 days because we want to really support people that had some really good ideas to continue with those ideas. We don't see it as ring fenced with 120 days. But if I was going to say one piece of learning is really to engage maybe some people that are seen more as middle management, colleagues of people, to really understand the importance of the work and the commitment beyond that 1 week.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. That's really helpful. I wondered, Claire, if you'd got any reflections on this, given those points, and just given the point about the pressure we're working under and the need to support this improvement approach in tackling that. What did you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for sharing that today. We do need to use our improvement methodologies across the city in order to be able to get the sort of the longevity of impact that we're actually looking for in terms of being able to change and reflect on the services that we provide for our patients and our population. I think I text Helen Rowley as we were talking in terms of just having a regroup with Helen in terms of understanding. As we work through this, really truly understanding what the level of impact potentially is, and have we incorporated some of that in terms of our ongoing planning as we head into sort of like the next fight. I know we're only going into the next half of the year, but in terms of the financial year for next year as well, and understanding how we actually need to change our services to be able to deliver better outcomes for our patients, and how we do that in order to be able to make sure we have the right people in the right place at the right time in order to be able to make that difference. I mean, the pressures that we are obviously experiencing at this point in time are absolutely huge. 260 patients, for example, with no reasons to resign. So the pressure is real and the pressure is there. I absolutely, the work that we're doing through the SDEC, I really, really want to make sure this is built in and bolted into there, because I think there is such an opportunity for us to transform care for our population, and if not now, when? So I think we have to be brave, and I think we have to be committed to these changes that we're talking about.
Thanks very much, Claire. Other questions and comments from colleagues? Tony?
Thank you, Julian. Thanks to everybody for the contribution. It's been really interesting. Just to comment on what we're talking about specifically at the moment, I think that we've arrived at a tipping point, really, and that tipping point is accentuated by the specific context in which we find ourselves and the pressures that we're under. But we've come to the end of the 5-year project with Virginia Mason, and that throws up the question, doesn't it, of how we make our improvement method the Leeds improvement method, and how we do that across the organisation as a whole, so that it's not a bolt-on, it's not something which is peripheral or marginal or only understood by small pockets within the organisation, but how it is spread out and embraced right across the organisation as a whole. And it's the movement, in a sense, from empowering people within the organisation to engaging them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Tony. Absolutely right. Any other comments or I can see Helen.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say well done to the team for pulling this together, because I appreciate the challenges that you've had, and obviously we've had lots of conversations recently. I was just going to say that obviously I appreciate the difficulty in bringing the team together, and if KPO can support in that over the next 30 days, then obviously we can have a conversation just to see what we can do to support that and to support the conversations around the work that was delivered, because I appreciate how challenging it can be and how daunting it can be when you've been in an RPIW setting to then go back to your own team who haven't been a part of it. So obviously the offer's there if we can do anything else to support you with that.
Thanks very much, Helen. Helen, you might be able to help me with this. I remember I was thinking back to when we did the report out after the RPIW, and I think I'm trying to recall, I think, did we have 10 metrics or things we were going to look at in particular, or have I conflated something else? No,
so the RPIW, within part of that week, we had a team of facilitators. So Vic and Fiona were part of the team around facilitating that work, and we asked them to design 10 high-level metrics, so based upon the 5 categories. And so they're not necessarily the national reported metrics, but they're metrics that we felt were really important to help people focus on the work around the challenges that we'd identified in the value stream. So these were really core things that, really resonated with the whole team. And we're still, the data is quite difficult to capture. They're obviously not run-of-the-mill data that you can just pull off the system. And so the team are still working through to collate the baselines of that so that we can work with those going forward. And Matthew Watkins, who's a KPO specialist, is now working on that digital side to support collecting metrics across the city of how we look at, I guess, the dashboard and other metrics that are being collected. But no, you didn't dream it.
No, okay, good. I mean, because I think having agreed those 10, and certainly I've been pushing those with my colleagues across the city, chief exec colleagues who have agreed that they're the right ones, is it would be great to get some data on those, wouldn't it? Just so we can track how the great work that's going on that we've heard about today is or isn't having an impact on those areas. So whatever we can do to support that as leaders, you must tell us and unblock any blockages or or try and accelerate progress on what needs to happen, because it'd be really good to see how we're doing in that regard. Yeah.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, Fiona and team. Fiona, you know I'm absolutely passionate about getting this right. So I'm hearing all what's come out of your work that you've done. I've also got some of the staff within LTHT, some of the AHPs have also done some quite complementary work as well to what you've got. And I would make reference in particular to a gentleman called Richard Sudes, who's in elderly medicine. I've just been looking at his, I called it the Wall of Wonder, where he's done some amazing work, where he's really scrutinised how a lot of the physiotherapists have been working within the elderly area. So I think there's a real opportunity to use the work you've got there. Love you to come and have a look at some of the work, and the team to look at the work that he's been doing, and just get some connectivity, because I think it'll drive some of what you were talking about here. So really excited to really push with that, and please, you know, get me involved so I can add my support and efforts to getting this right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Janice, and I will definitely take you up on that offer.
That's great, Janice. Thank you. It's excellent. Any other comments, questions? I wondered, Claire, whether we could get the kind of, you know, the work that's going on here and the content of this, which feels really important in terms of our collective challenges, somehow on the table at some of our other forums, like, you know, when we come together as colleagues, when we're looking at the pressures, just reminding everyone, and I'm sure you're reminding your own chief execs and directors of this work, but just to make sure this is supported by all of us in those discussions at SRAB and as chief execs, because it does feel, doesn't it, that this is the way in which we're going to sustainably tackle the challenges.
We can certainly do that, and Helen and I will organise to meet next week just to try and pull together, work out how we can get a bit more movement on the understanding where we are against those KPIs, Julian, and then we can at City Silver and so on. I think also because there's the meeting that Sarah Forbes and Kath Roth are going to be chairing moving forward, System Flow. I think it would sit there really nicely and complement some of the other KPIs around how long people are waiting and those sorts of things as well.
Yeah. All right. That's great. Okay. Well, thank you again to the team for all the work you put into this and the report out. It's really good. Please join us at the next report out, Friday the 17th of September, same time, same place. And look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks ever so much. Take care.